Yeah. There's a TV show of Third Shift Society in development.
Stop! Hi, Meredith. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I am super excited to talk to you and like get to know more about you and how you got into webcomics. I've just been so curious for so long.
That's what I'm here for. Ask away.
Okay, let's get into it. Give us an intro to you and how you got into making webcomics.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I am an artist and writer from just outside Philadelphia. I've been drawing basically my whole life. I was like one of those notebook doodle kids in high school.
Aw.
Uh, but I didn't start getting into comics until college. I was doing it as a hobby, basically as an alternative to going out and drinking because it's just not my thing. Um, After I graduated, I started doing some freelance work. So I did like kids' books illustrations and
Oh,
then
wow.
just for hire work for some indie comics, usually things like colorist jobs. And then I decided, you know what? Making other people's comics dreams come true is fun, but I want to try doing the thing myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I started working on Third Shift Society just as a little side project. I posted it on my own website and also posted it on like Tapas and Webtoon, and just to see if it had legs, you know.
Yeah.
Webtoon eventually reached out and they were like, "Hey, do you want to be an original?" And kind of hemmed and hawed about it, but other people
Yeah.
who had originals were telling me about their experiences, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, sure, let's give it a try.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we are.
That's great. How long was it from when you were publishing on Canvas until they were like, "Hey"?
Let me think. So I started the comic like right at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, and it was originally in a print format, like the orientation rather than the vertical scroll.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of an adjustment period where people were yelling at me like, "Stop posting full pages. This is a vertical platform." And I was like, kicking and screaming. But eventually I did that, and then it was maybe, oh gosh, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. It took a little while to get me on board. Um, yeah, so then there was like multiple months of development because they do want you to have like a lot of episodes in the can before you
Yeah.
launch.
Hmm.
They don't want you to like run out and have to go on hiatus immediately, you know.
Yeah.
Then I think we launched in like 2019, so it's been a minute.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's insane. Um, yeah, and when you were on Webtoon, it was kind of a different environment on Canvas. I mean, back then I think it was either Discover or Challenge League or whatever.
It was
Um,
Discover. Yeah, it was Webtoon
Discover.
Discover. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Because I didn't start getting into webcomics until like 2018, and by then it had turned into Canvas. Um, yeah, it's definitely changed a lot since then for sure.
Yeah, I guess like during the pandemic when everyone was home, and just stuck on their phones and their computers,
Yeah,
yeah, then it really was like they hit the gas on the development. So things have really changed since then.
yeah. And you said you were working as a web developer during this time?
Um, yeah, well, I worked at a small publisher, so I was doing like graphic design, first off, and some spot illustrations and stuff for magazines, and they did like a lot of puzzle books, like those crossword puzzle books you see in the
Yeah.
grocery store, as well as various magazines. And they were like, we want to do more online stuff. We want to set up an online shop. And I was like, well, we can use like a Shopify or something. I'm like, no, can you build us something from the ground up? I'm like, yeah, okay.
Having no prior web development experience. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, I mean, I my degree was in information sciences. I didn't go to school for art. So I had like, done web design and web programming, and databases and things like that. So it wasn't that much of a stretch. Like I was still using like those skills that I learned before.
Yeah.
They weren't paying me for those skills, to be quite honest. They're just paying me as a graphic designer. So
Mm.
yeah. So eventually I was like, I'm gonna go. That made the
Yeah.
moving to the web comic world like much more appealing.
Yeah, it's funny. I rarely meet any other webcomic artists that started in graphic design because that's where I started too. So tell us about the story of Third Shift Society.
Oh, okay. Just to let you know, I'm terrible at the elevator pitch. It's been years, and I've never.
It's okay.
So Third Shift Society follows Ellie, who is a girl in her 20s. She's kind of struggling to figure out life. And after a chance encounter with a monster, she discovers that the supernatural is real and that she herself actually has some psychic powers. She teams up with Ichabod, who is the dapper gentleman with the jack-o'-lantern head that you see on the cover. And they run a paranormal detective agency.
That's great elevator pitch.
Yeah, people are always like, you should compare it to like other things too to give people an idea. Like the things I've heard are Buffy or Supernatural and Scooby-Doo. I'm like, well, I haven't had a villain who's like dressing up for the benefit of acquiring real estate. I don't know if that really holds, but if you say so.
Yeah. And you said at one point in a little interview with Wattpad Books that you were inspired by like the house with the clock in its walls, Haunting, and like the Silent 2 Hill video
Silent Hill
game.
too, yeah.
So, like, how did you take inspiration from those things and like turn it into Third Shift Society?
Well, okay, so for
Yeah.
those who don't know, The House with the Clock in Its Walls is a book that I think is technically for like middle schoolers, but it's what I would think of as a cozy ghost story. Haunting was on Discovery Channel. It was reenactments of people's supposed real life encounters with the supernatural. And Silent Hill 2 is a survival horror video game. That's tough to say. They recently came out with a remake of it. I haven't played it. Heard it's good. But I guess the thing that ties them all together is a really strong sense of atmosphere. And in Silent Hill 2, I would say there's a good deal of world building too. There's um, you get a sense that there's a lot of spooky things going on, and you may or may not actually find what is causing them. I kind of like that. I like that not everything is explained because it's like not everything is explained in real life. Not everything is neat and tidy with a bow on top. Uh, but yeah, I guess just general like being in the horror genre and a commitment to atmosphere is something that I wanted to take into my own comics.
I can definitely get that vibe from reading Third Shift Society. Like you applied that really well into the story. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be tough to do like atmosphere in comics, and you never really know if you pull it off, especially if you spend a lot of time just sitting with the material yourself. You sort of lose perspective. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
So when you were thinking of the story for Third Shift Society, how did you create the main protagonist, Ellie? And like, how did you come up with giving Ichabod a pumpkin for a head? Like, how did you brainstorm thinking of the story?
Well, Ichabod came just from a notebook drawing when I was in college, and I don't even know where it came from. I just thought like, oh, this is kind of an interesting silhouette. There's something to this character. Tuck it in the back of my mind for later, and then as the years went on, I would kind of pull out these characters and concepts to play with, and I figured, okay, well, this guy, he's got to be a paranormal investigator. Doesn't seem like he'd be very hireable for other jobs. And he, of course, needs, an assistant or someone to play off of. Not quite a foil, but a partner. So that's sort of how Ellie came about, and I think she was I was like around my mid-20s then. Like I was figuring out what it means to be an adult, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. So I think I took some of that energy in making that character.
Yeah, because at the start of the story, Ellie is down for the count. She's about to, she's can't hold down a job. She messes things up a lot. She's struggling
Mhm.
for money. Like, so she's a very relatable character. I feel like a lot of people can find a connection with Ellie in that sense of just struggling through life.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of people go through that period in their like early to mid 20s and beyond nowadays, where it's like everything you just seem to be pushing that rock uphill every day, and it's tough. And I think we all feel it, so I guess that's maybe why she struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah, she's funny too. I love her personality. She's great. She's like, she takes things in stride really well, which I thought was interesting because she gets thrust into this situation where she suddenly finds out she has these psychic powers. And she's like, huh, yeah, okay, well, that's weird. and then and then it hits her and she's like, what just happened?
Yes, yes. I mean, I don't know if you've ever met someone like that who in the moment they're super calm and focused and like we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna go through this emergency and it'll be fine, I'll get you there, and then afterwards they're just like, oh, vomit everywhere, oh, I need to stay inside for a week.
Yeah, yeah. I That made me laugh. I was like, wow, she's like a really calm and collected person. And then and then yeah, she just passes.
Yeah.
So tell me about your art process. Like what does that look like when you're creating episodes for Third Shift Society?
I will be the first to say that I am not good at keeping up with the Webtoon deadline. Most creators, they expect you to pump out an episode a week.
Yeah.
So that's 40 plus rendered panels. Um, and a lot of people find ways to do that. They use like pre-made backgrounds to have a lot of assistance.
Yeah.
And I try to do a little bit of that, but it's mostly a one-man show here. I do have one assistant, Laura. She's great. She helps me with the inks, but there's only one of her.
Mm.
So it takes a while. I guess I do a pretty standard like thumbnails and sketches, inks, colors, letters. So process wise, I don't think it's that innovative. The one thing that maybe is a little bit different that I do is I model my own backgrounds.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about your backgrounds. Like how did you because I've used SketchUp, but I've only posed backgrounds that I've bought.
Hmm.
So how long did it take you to learn the software and like build your own backgrounds in it?
I started messing around with that back when it was still Google SketchUp.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I way back when it was free, I still have like an ancient free version that I use because
Oh, nice.
people have money, man.
It is so expensive.
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh, so expensive.
So, yeah, I just started playing with it. I thought it was neat. I thought this was a really interesting way to make backgrounds. Originally, I was just doing it to kind of figure out perspectives and camera angles, and just using, make a rectangular prism, and this is where the character stands in the scene. But the more I started playing around with it, I was like, I could actually do a lot with this. So I started rendering my own backgrounds. And this was before that kind of became the norm. So now when you have people who buy the backgrounds from like Acon 3D or wherever, it's a great resource. And I have bought a few things like boats and cars and stuff that I don't like
Hmm.
doing vehicles.
Yeah, yeah, those are really complicated.
Yeah, but I think the issue with it being so widespread is that you have, that old joke of like, oh, all the cold-hearted princes and isekai duchesses, they live in the same castle.
Yeah, I've seen that castle so many times.
I want someone to do a webtoon where they kind of like lampshade that a little bit, where it's like, wait a minute, I've seen this castle before, and there's like a whole suburban development style, like the same castle. Or the 3D horses.
Oh my God, the 3D horses.
I think they're hilarious. Like, I totally no shade at all to the people who use that because it is. like to
It's tough
keep that
keeping up with
schedule
those
is
deadlines.
cool. Yeah, but like I think it's just funny.
It is funny. There are some creators that draw horses like really well.
Hmm.
Like Junpei, she draws horses really well. The creator of All Colors of Snow draws them really well. Like there's plenty of examples of creators that take the time to draw them.
Hmm.
But you have the Webtoon studios that are really trying to pump out a lot of webcomics. So to keep up with those deadlines, I
It's tough.
it,
It's tough. Anyone who works in any kind of arts field is always like pushing against the demands of capitalism. So we do the best we can.
like I don't put it past individual creators needing to take those shortcuts because I do understand
Hmm.
that creating webcomics is insanely hard and it's a lot of work, especially for you originals creators who you have 40 panels minimum a week to pump out and you're doing like 50 episode seasons. So it's just a lot to keep up with. So I can understand the shortcuts.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't keep up with it. I my editor has been very gracious, but yeah, it's a
I
lot.
was going to ask you like how you deal with those deadlines and
Poorly.
I do want to hear more about that. I feel like so many people like would find a lot of like comfort in knowing that somebody also is struggling with those deadlines.
Yeah, I mean, well, do you find that a lot of the other artists you talk to, they kind of downplay it, like how tough it is, or are they more realistic about it and like, yeah,
N-
it can be
No,
brutal?
I think most of the time they're pretty realistic. Yeah.
Yeah. No, to be quite honest, like, you know, they tell you in anything, any kind of business, arts, whatever, you have the good, fast, cheap triangle, right? And you can pick two out of the three. If it's good and fast, it's not going to be cheap. If it's good and cheap, it's not going to be fast, so on
Yeah.
and so forth. So we kind of run headlong into that. I basically refuse to compromise on the good part because it's like if I'm going to put my
Mm.
name on this, I want it to be something that's worth reading, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
So it's it, I kind of have to sacrifice like getting because the way Webtoon works is like you get paid per episode,
Yeah.
and then you also will get like some ad revenue and all that. There's like percentages and all the business stuff. But yeah, so I just have to take a little bit more time than they would like me to, but I have to hope that it comes through in the story and the art
Yeah.
that this is a labor of love. This is not just churning it out to make money. And to be clear, like there's nothing wrong with that. I understand and accept that that is some people's approach and that's how they survive and that's how they get the funds to do other projects that maybe they're more passionate about or maybe they just like this, they think it's fun, they churn it out. It's like it's kind of like sometimes you just want junk food, you know? Sometimes you just want to read something shiny and pretty and there's not a lot of depth to it, but you can like churn it out and sometimes a candy bar is the best thing in the world and that's just what you want. But that, at least for the series, that's just not what I want to do. Have been lucky enough to have a very understanding editor, and Webtoon has been willing to work with me to put something out that hopefully people connect with and
Yeah.
is a little bit outside of their business model as far as timing goes.
Yeah. But I mean, like take it from the person who's read your series. It's amazing. I can just see all of the passion and love that you pour into it and you care. Like you put so much care into it in all of the artwork and the story. Like the pacing is really well done too. Like I know the seasons are shorter or whatever. I know the episodes are shorter than some other webcomics, but I mean, look at where your hard work has led you to. You got nominated for an Eisner Award. Like how cool is that? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
that was I thought that was a mistake. I'm
Thought it
like,
was a mistake.
that was like because that was that was in 2020. That was when like the lockdowns began. It was like shortly after
Right.
that. And my editor at the time told me like, "Oh my God, you got an Eisner nomination." I was like, "You're screwing with me." Because there's so
Oh
much
my
good stuff
goodness.
out there. I was like, "Why?" And I mean, I know there's so many webtoons out there. You can't promote everything.
Yeah.
Like if you're on the Webtoon business side. But I feel like my series is not one that gets a ton of promotion, just like on the social media and on the front page
It
and all of that.
doesn't. It
Yeah.
doesn't, and it makes me annoyed. Because I'm like, I see how good of a series it is and how much I love Ellie. I love Ichabod. Like, I love the world building and the story. I'm just like, it deserves more recognition. But at the same time, like, even if you're not being super pushed on the Webtoon app and like their socials, like, you still were recognized for your talent and how good it is.
Yeah, that's all. I was surprised. I was like, because usually people have to know about it, and I
Yeah.
wasn't sure who even knew about it.
Yeah.
So that was really cool, and I was like super humbled and grateful. And it's like, they say, "Oh, even if you don't win, it's just an honor to be nominated," and it kind of is because it's like
Yeah.
the industry gatekeepers have looked down on you and ruled that yeah, you're all right.
And for our listeners who've never heard of Eisner Awards, they're basically like the most prestigious awards that you can get in the comic industry, which is essentially it's like the Oscars, but for
Yes, that's what I've
webcomics.
heard. Like the Oscars of comics.
Yeah. So to further my point, that is insanely cool and it's well deserved.
Oh, thank you.
I hope
Maybe
you
one day I'll
win.
win. That would be even cooler. That would be another little
I
feather in
want,
my cap.
I want to see you win. I'm just like, oh, yeah. And I remember how long ago was I reading Third Ship Society? I think I started reading it like maybe a few months after it came out.
Hmm.
Um, and then I didn't start picking it up again until like a few months ago. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't read Third Shift Society in so long.
Well, now there's like a nice backlog and two books.
Yes.
So if you don't mind sharing me
Yes.
the screen.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about your print deal. So what was
Yeah.
that like getting that like what was it like getting approached by your editor saying, "Hey, there it is.
I just have the
Yay!"
first volume. Ghost on the bed.
Oh, it
So
looks so
pretty.
good. I'm getting my copy today. Uh I wanted to have it this weekend, but it didn't come out that way. But yeah, how was it translating it into like a print format?
Uh, well, so Webtoon has this was out shortly after they did like the whole Wattpad merger, and then they were moving into their own print books. Because I think
Mhm.
prior to this, it was you had to go to like an outside publishing company or do a Kickstarter
Yeah.
and self-publish, which I know several people have done, and it's worked out well for them. But this
Mhm.
they came. I think I expressed to my editor that I was interested in print books because um, that's kind of like the area of the comics world that I came from was print, and I have a lot of affinity for it. And I'm like, we all stare at a screen all day long for work. I just want to like not stare at a screen sometimes when I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
relaxing. So they, my editor kind of put that out there. They approached me and they said, "Do you want to do a print book? We'd be interested in adapting this." Um, I had like I had my webtoon editor and then a print editor, and they had a whole design team that will actually take the material and create a book map, saying like this is what goes on this page, this is what goes on the next page, break it up in a way that works for print. And then they have layout designers and people who will design like the chapter pages and all the back material and everything. So a lot of it is just taking what's there and reorganizing it. So thankfully they did a lot of the legwork on that. On my end, it was first of all commenting and uh, giving notes on layouts and dialogue and things like that, because they do want to do some edits, especially if they're. I think their legal department is very defensive, and that is their job. They like, we don't want to put out anything that might even get us sued. So they had me change like color schemes or change references to companies that actually exist and make them, more generic.
Yeah, brand protection.
Yeah. Or something that really surprised me was how hard it is to have a lottery ticket included in the art or in any kind of reference. Yeah, because there's apparently all this stuff about like you can't use the word lotto and something about win big, and there's all these like trademarks around any kind of language like that and
Interesting.
restrictions. And I'm just like, I have no idea how this came about. I'm like, the story behind this must have been crazy. I don't even know what we ended up doing. I don't think I even put the word lotto in there. It was like scratchums or something.
Yeah.
But they said that even that, no go.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, and also like companies, like a coffee shop, they had me coming up with so many different names. I knew I was losing it when I was suggesting Hans Whole Bean Coffee. So
Because you can't, like, I guess even saying something like something slightly similar to maybe Starbucks would be too like
yeah,
too close to the to the name.
yeah, and there's just so many, like there's so many businesses out there that like there were even things that were like, oh, there's an application for a business in Texas that has this name, you can't use it. I'm like, what?
Man.
So that
Yeah,
was crazy. I think the lawyers probably wanted to strangle me. 'Cause I was
oh
like,
my
what?
goodness.
Like, I'm lucky you guys are in Canada, because like I think you're just up there cursing my heart right now. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like overall, the whole process was very good. I'm like super happy with how the books turned out. I just thought that was funny. That was something like I never was even on my radar when they said
Mhm.
like, oh, do you want to make a book? That was not something I thought I was going to get tripped up over. So
Yeah,
if anyone wants to convert their comics to a book, be ready.
be ready for copyright.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I have some Canvas mutuals that put like real brand names in their comics, and it's jarring because I'm so used to reading maybe originals that have like very like they don't use the word YouTube, they say something else kind of similar, or Instagram, sometimes I see Pixtagram. And
Mhm.
so when I see like the actual like they're talking about real world uh companies and names or whatever, it just throws me off. I'm like, this is okay, right? Because they're just Canvas creators.
Yeah, I if it's just canvas, I think that it's whatever. I think it's kind of too small potatoes for anyone to pursue.
Yeah.
But if they become a Webtoon original, they'll probably be like, change that.
Yeah.
And then with the print book, it's even more
Even
scrutiny.
more so.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
what did I think I used like pictograph or pictogram or something for Instagram, and they were just like, no,
Mm.
that's too close to something else that exists.
Oh no. Oh my goodness. That's kind of funny though.
Yeah, but like I
um
said, I was losing it. I was just like typing out nonsense names.
oh, that's funny. Um so let's kind of get into advice for aspiring creators or maybe even experienced creators. You know, when we talk about storytelling for webtoons, especially if you're publishing on Webtoon, they say that the first 3 episodes are the most important. So tell me why you think that is.
Well, I think part of it is just that there's so much content out there. You're constantly competing for eyeballs, and you're not only fighting against other webtoons, but YouTube videos, your Netflix, Hulu, whatever. And Webtoon, quite honestly, it's a business. So they want people to get hooked from the get-go. And from a storytelling perspective, there is definitely a benefit to that. You want people to stick around and, see what you're cooking here. So having like something that's a little dense, a little hard to get into, like you would with maybe novels of the past. I mean, I'm sure we all read things in high school where we're like, why would someone soldier through the first 10 chapters to get to the good part? Yeah, so I guess just being able to capture the reader's imagination in the beginning is important. You kind of have to let them know, like, this is the genre, this is the characters, and this is what makes it a little bit different than anything you've read before. And you should hang around and see where this is going.
Yeah. When we talk about storytelling, in film, especially TV shows or whatever it is, we have things called like the inciting incident, and then we have the hook to the series. And maybe just talking about Third Shift Society in particular, like, can you tell us what your inciting incident was and maybe the hook of the story? Maybe that could explain it better.
Well, I guess it would probably be Ichabod being flung out the window by a monster.
Yep.
I think that's where it takes the story from slice of life, young woman struggling to find her way, to holy crap, something weird's going on here.
Yep.
And also there's a monster, and oh my god, fight for your life, and oh, fire hands, superpowers, or well, psychic powers. And
yeah. I was gonna say that's what I love about Third Shift Society in particular is we start out and we get this impression that we just have this slice of life, very relatable type of story with Ellie struggling and trying to make ends meet and dealing with her like very regular problems, and then all of a sudden she's suddenly thrust into this world of supernatural beings and having psychic powers. And it was a very, like, when I first read it, it was a very exciting twist to the story, and I was just like, I gotta keep reading because this is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest, I'm not great at like laying out the hook to start with. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm like a little bit older than the average reader and I'm like a big literature nerd. I don't mind a bit of a slow burn getting into it, but my first editor, she was like, we should put Ichabod flying out the window in the first episode. Because the way I was cutting it originally, it was going to be the second episode. She's like, no, we got to get people right away. But they'll know, like, there's some crazy stuff happening. So in retrospect, I think that was the right call. In the beginning, I was like, I don't know. I want them to stick with it, but I want them to, sometimes there's value in getting people to work for the cool parts of the story a little bit. But yeah, I think with this medium on this platform, it was the right call. And
yeah,
to be fair, like, you do have to tailor your work to the platform as well, and that can be a challenge.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with the audience that Webtoon has, where people do have a shorter attention span, and especially this climate on Webtoon right now, where people are so used to so many different stories and webcomics with varying components to them that they're quick to make judgments on a series. It's a smart plan to hook them in the first episode, just because of how Webtoon is right now.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I wonder if it's the culture of the platform too, which I think you've seen a shift even in the past couple years. People read a lot of things, but they kind of read very shallowly, It's just like something that's quick and fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think maybe that also affects the type of stories that Webtoon is looking to sign on as well. Like just because you have to consider the desire of your audience.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to just Webtoon as a business. They
Mhm.
want to get people to click and they want to get people to subscribe and to fast pass. Um, and so they're from their perspective, they're trying to do it in a way that's going to be best for them in generating content and revenue, basically. So, but I mean, us canvas artists, like we don't have to worry
Mhm.
about that. Um, being indie creators, we're not beholden to those standards if we don't want to. Um, but maybe for creators who are really trying to have that really strong hook and story, like an engaging story, like you could put more effort into it. But um, I just hear a lot of creators struggle with the storytelling aspect, and they're not sure how they should go about like planning their story. So do
Yeah.
you have any advice for those creators that are just kind of struggling to like formulate the plot?
Well, I mean, how would you say people have expressed that? What about it is difficult for them? Is it just the nature of the platform and how everything is supposed to like end on a hook to get to the next episode, or
They're
is it the
more
type of audience?
Most of them have expressed that they're having a hard time putting the story together, just like the overarching story, like beginning, middle, end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of them feel like they have to have every single episode mapped out from the beginning.
I don't think that's necessary. I think you definitely have to have the script ready and pretty much set when you start drawing each episode. Um, but the way I do it is I actually, first of all, I just write it out like longhand. I have like my yellow legal pad, and that's where all my stuff goes. I think something about the actual physical writing process makes your brain process it a little bit differently than typing it out on the computer. And I know, like, I knew where the story was going to begin. I had a general idea of where it was going to end. And there were certain beats I wanted to hit along the way, like certain scenes I had in my mind that, like, okay, I want to incorporate this. How do I get there? And then I took it just arc by arc. And in doing that and not being um, so determined to lay out every single episode all in a row, all set in stone, I think sometimes interesting things will present themselves. Like when you're writing one episode, sometimes you'll put in a detail that just kind of feels right, even though you're not sure why. And then maybe in the next arc or the one after that, you say, wait a minute, I can call back to this thing that happened, make that connection, and it makes the story feel more fulsome. And it also makes you look really cool because people are like, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, you did that! You did this the
Yeah.
whole time!" Yeah, like leaving yourself room to improvise, like to the extent that you're comfortable. I think can really enrich your story.
hmm Yeah, and I think having it be too rigid could also limit
Hmm.
somebody. Because a lot of the time, like in my experience, I will just be doing chores or editing an episode and I suddenly get an idea for my story. And I'm just like, oh, actually, that would be really cool. So even though I do have the story planned out, the major arcs planned, pacing, sometimes I will get these ideas that I'm really excited about. I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually do want to fit this in the story. Where can I
Hmm.
put it? So I think
Yeah,
that's a good point.
yeah, and we all like we go through life, we have experiences, we consume different media, and I'm not saying like, oh, rip off, whatever your favorite TV show, but
Yeah.
look at how they will handle certain scenes, certain characters, um, the emotional development of one character, or you know, and take inspiration from that. Not necessarily, like I said, rip it off, but just see how it's done and how that makes you feel, and try and incorporate some of that into your own writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember watching, so Webtoon did a creator summit back in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and Brie Boswell was giving an example of how to structure your first 3 episodes, and she was bringing it back to the story hook. And she gave the example of Shrek, where the inciting incident in the story is Lord Farquaad sending all of the mystical characters, whatever, to Shrek's swamp.
Yep.
And, he has to figure out how to deal with that, how to go back to his life how he wanted to, and then it just ends up turning into a whole adventure.
I will say though, sometimes you can be too beholden to like a 3-act structure, or like circular storytelling, and I think it's okay to break away from that. I think who was it? Was it like Kurt Vonnegut or something? There was a talk that he did, that's on YouTube somewhere, and he was talking about story structure, and he took the Lord of the Rings and showed how, like, if you do the little chart where you have like the rising action, the falling action across the different acts. It's like for the Lord of the Rings, a lot of that is flat, or you have like little bumps, little peaks and valleys, but it doesn't follow your traditional 3-act story, at least not in the books. And people still love that, and people still got something out of that. So yeah, I don't think you need to stick to that as like an ironclad rule. Now, editors and the people who sign the checks uh, might not be so happy to have you experiment. I will say that, because they're risk averse. Honestly, they're less risk averse than a traditional publisher. I will say that. I'll give them that. But any sort of company, they're going to want to stick with what works and what has been proven to work. So if you want to do something a little out of the box, you're probably going to have to, like start on canvas. Like you said, if you're in the indie circuit, you get less exposure, but then you're also less beholden to the people signing the checks, like I said. So, I mean, I would definitely encourage folks to try that. If they
Yeah.
have like a crazy story structure that they're like, I don't know if anyone will go for this, just do it, man. Just do it.
Yeah, some of the best webtoons I've read are either on Canvas or started on Canvas and moved to originals. Like there's so much creativity and talent on Canvas, and I get really inspired by my other mutuals who are incredible artists and incredible storytellers. But then sometimes you have the originals, or just maybe even the professional work that use very recycled tropes and characters and art styles, and I can see there's a fatigue of that on just webtoon platforms in general.
Have you heard at all from like people in audiences? Is there any kind of like frustration or kind of feeling burnt out on that type of thing?
Mm-hmm. I see it a lot, especially on social platforms like Reddit, where people will post in the Webtoon subreddit and they'll have screenshots of maybe new webtoons that came out, not necessarily on Webtoon in particular, maybe on Manta, maybe on Tapas. But like the tropes, there's a fatigue in those tropes. But there's also a lot of psychology behind it where, for example, people have a hard time deciding on something to watch on Netflix because there are so many options.
It's
and I can see the same fatigue on webtoon platforms where you have very similar stories, very similar tropes. And I'm not trying to hate on any series in particular. It's just kind of like I'm giving examples from like just readers in general, right?
Sure.
But that's what I love about Third Shift Society, is that it's just so like unique and fun and engaging, and it's way more of a fun read for me than, say, reading those other comics on other platforms.
Yeah, your 20th isekai today. It's tough though. There's a lot of originals creators who are telling unique stories, and people on Canvas,
Yes.
and I think part of the problem is there is definitely a financial motive in
Oh,
putting in all these like very shiny, mostly the Korean manhwa. And I think a lot of that has to do with their studio system there. For anyone who doesn't know, a lot of the original creators here, it's a one-man show, or they kind of have to like cobble together their own um, geographically separated studio from maybe friends they went to art school with, or people that they, ask other creators on the Discord, like, oh, do you know a flat? Or, oh, do you know an anchor? And just cobble together their own ragtag team. Whereas in Korea, you have these studios where assistants will do the work basically under the watchful eye of like the master and will turn out these visually stunning works.
Very visually stunning. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it has a bit more of that assembly line character to it, I think. But the benefit for the assistants then is that they are basically doing like an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So then they gain the skills and then they can become, the comic master.
Yeah.
And there's benefits to it, there's drawbacks, but there's a lot more financial support that allows them to even engage in that system. Whereas here in the US, it's like the webcomic system is not nearly so developed.
Yeah.
And even like the big two, like your Marvel and DC, they have like their artists, their writers, their colorists and everything that they go to, but it is still like more spread out and not the same like intensive studio experience. So I don't know. I mean, maybe one day we'll see that sort of development here. I think it could be interesting. I think you could get some cool work out of it, but you also then have to worry about like fighting that homogeneity.
And I think it just comes down to like what makes sense to Webtoon or Manta or Tapas, whoever, as from like a business sense. Like them providing imports are really easy. They have overseas studios that are already producing this work. Like it's very easy to just translate it and then put it on their platform. So from a business sense, it does make sense for them to
Exactly.
do
They
it
pay
that
for
way.
it once and they use it multiple times over.
But I think that's where the fatigue comes from a reader's perspective. I mean, back in November, I think there was 29 new series on Webtoon. And you can just see in the comments, it's kind of interesting. People will complain about a lot of the very similar manhwa, but at the same time, they really enjoy it. Like the comments are like, I know it's annoying and I know it's overused, but I eat it up every time.
Yeah.
So even if there is that fatigue of choice and similar stories and characters, people are still enjoying that type of content regardless. That's what I love about Third Shift Society, is that it's so unique and there's so much cool world building into it, and it's just a really fun, exciting read, and I can see all the hard work that you do put into it, and I can see the passion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, you've heard about the TV show thing, right?
Excuse me? What?
Yeah, that was announced last October, November, something like that. Yeah.
No. Okay. Whoa. Backtrack. Okay. I need explanations.
Okay, sorry. I thought this was out there, but I guess it didn't like spread that far. Yeah. There's a TV show of Third Shift Society in development.
Oh my god. Wait, how did I not know this? Did you post it on your Instagram? How did I miss this?
Did I post it? You know what? I might have just done it as a story because I'm like, I always feel weird. I don't want my Instagram to come out as just like a self promo thing, you know?
Well, I'm
yeah.
sorry. You have a TV series coming out at some point and you don't put that on your Instagram.
I just put it on the story.
I don't see stories
like,
all the time. I would see it if you made a post about it. Oh my god, that is
maybe
so exciting.
I posted. I don't know. I don't think I posted. I don't.
Oh my god, can you tell me anything about it?
Yeah. It's just still in the development phases, but we have we have Jim Henson Studios signed on.
Stop.
Yeah, to do like some
Oh
of the
my
future.
god. Is that all you've heard is or can say is the
No,
studio?
there's sorry, hold on, let me just pull
Oh my
up.
god, my mind is being blown right now.
Have
I
the
had no idea.
Yeah, it's Rehab Entertainment and Jim Henson Studios, and then there's a writer attached to it who I met, but he was he worked on DC's Legends of Tomorrow and Person of Interest, so he's the signed on to be like the lead writer, and I think the showrunner too. I don't know, it's still kind of getting worked out. But yeah, I actually met with him at San Diego Comic-Con this past summer, and we just happened to overlap in the time that we were there. And he's a really nice dude. I think he kind of gets it. I think he's catching what I'm throwing, theme wise, and yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
You're acting so nonchalant about this, Meredith. Oh my god. You're like, oh yeah, it's a TV series about my webcomic. No big deal. It is a big deal.
It's a big deal. It's cool, but it's like there's so many steps. It's like all the
Right.
stars have to align to
Yeah.
get the thing actually made and out to where people can see it.
Right.
So I don't let myself get too hyped up about it. I'm just kind of, I'm enjoying the process. I'm like happy that it got this far, that there are people who care enough about it to even give it a go. But I'm not gonna like be, oh my god, because it's like, who knows if it's gonna happen. But
Okay. I get that perspective. I get you don't want to be too like have too high expectations or whatever because it does take a very long time to get something like this off the ground and distributed. But that is seriously so cool that you have people who believe so much in third shift society that they want to put it into different mediums. Like that is absolutely amazing.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, people will be like, oh, are you nervous because it's gonna be live action? It's gonna be so different. And part of me is like a little bit, but also I feel like you can appreciate each thing for what it is, if you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
in each medium, an IP is going to change a little bit.
Yeah.
Just by, the nature of the medium itself, and you have different like people working on it, and they're going to be like a lot of creative people who are going to have their fingerprints on this. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what comes of it, what they can make, and I'm prepared for it to be different. And like I said, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. I that's a good attitude to have about it too. No, that is really, really cool. I really hope you guys can all get it off the ground and made because I would binge watch that. I don't care what platform it streams on. I am there.
I think that's part of the process is figuring out like get someone to carry it, because it's, let's see, Wattpad Webtoon Studios is one of the leads on this, but I'm not sure if they done anything on the in the American TV market yet. It's been released.
I've heard I've heard that they were planning on turning Freaking Romance into a film, like a film.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Like I would assume they would be aiming for like the bigger streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu, whatever, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
I think there was even talk of like maybe network TV, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
I don't care
think
where it is. I'm there. I'm watching it.
It's like a lot of people who are good at having meetings are going to have meetings, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see what comes of it.
Yeah. That's incredible. I wish you all the best in that venture. I really hope it works out for you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Me too. I hope you guys get to see something cool. I just want to meet the Muppets.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's incredible. Okay, Meredith, thank you so much for joining me today on the Webtoon Wave podcast. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful chatting with you too.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see what comes out of Third Shift Society. I'm gonna catch up, get my physical copies of Volume 1, and I'm just so excited to have it on my shelf where I can just flip it open and read
Well, I hope you like it.
it.
Hope it's everything that you got from the webcomic and more.
I just love, like, I started buying more print versions of webcomics, and I've loved it. So there's something. It's just so. It's a different experience with the physical copies that is just more fun than scrolling on your phone.
Definitely. I'm a book lover myself.
So yeah. Okay, you can go read Third Shift Society on Webtoon. You can follow Meredith on her socials at Meredith Moriarty. Stay tuned for a possible TV series of Third Shift Society. That's really exciting. And you can go find printed copies of Third Shift Society at any major bookstore, Barnes & Noble, Target. You can buy online on Amazon. So go support her, go follow her, go read Third Shift Society. It's amazing. So if you found this episode fun, informative, or entertaining, give us a like, give us a follow. We're on Instagram at the Webtoon Wave. You can follow us there to stay up to date on all things webcomics, news about future guests, and fun content. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. So stay creative, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.